Hey everyone. Welcome to AfriHeart Stories, your go-to spot for African tales. Don't forget to like, subscribe and drop a comment. Now sit back and enjoy. The chandeliers sparkled above them, casting golden reflections across the mirrored walls of the Lagos Grand Ballroom. Waiters floated through the crowd with trays of champagne, and the clinking of glasses blended with laughter, business banter and whispered gossip. It was the kind of evening where people didn't just mingle, they performed. Rena stood by the tall glass windows, swirling wine in her crystal glass, dressed in a sleek emerald gown that hugged her curves and announced presence without screaming for it. Her afro-puffed bun sat like a crown, and the diamond studs in her ears caught the light each time she turned her head. But her eyes weren't on the skyline view outside. They were locked on her husband, Toby. Tall, dark-skinned, with shoulders that stretched his tuxedo perfectly. He moved like confidence itself, shaking hands, cracking quiet jokes and leaning in when he spoke. He had always been magnetic. Even now, 7 years into their marriage, he still made her stomach flutter. But tonight something was different. Her lips parted slightly as she watched the woman in red. Zaina. Rena didn't know her name yet, but she knew the type. The dress she wore, blood red, slit to the thigh, clinging like sin, was the kind women wore when they came to be noticed. And noticed she was. Heads turned when she walked past, not just for her beauty but for her boldness. She was confident. Too confident. Rena's grip tightened around her glass as she watched Zaina lean in closer to Toby. Her hand playfully brushed his forearm. Her laughter rang a little too loud, her gaze held his a little too long. Rena didn't move. She didn't storm across the room. She just watched. "Everything okay, Rena?" asked her friend Ifeoma, appearing by her side. Rena smiled without looking away. "Watch her. See how she hasn't even glanced at me." Ifeoma followed her gaze, then blinked. "Wait, is she? Does she not know?" "Apparently not," Rena murmured. Zaina laughed again, this time tossing her curls over one shoulder as she said something that made Toby raise his eyebrows. He gently stepped back, a small polite smile on his lips, and nodded. But Zaina's eyes never moved. She followed his retreat like a lioness stalking prey. "Should I go say something?" Ifeoma asked. "No," Rena said smoothly. "Let's see how far she goes." Across the room, Toby finally turned and met Rena's eyes. His face shifted just slightly, but she caught it. The flicker of unease. A glance that said, "I saw everything." Rena raised her glass in a mock toast. Toby looked away. "Men," Ifeoma hissed under her breath. "You would think the ring on his finger was invisible." "He's not the problem," Rena said, voice calm but cool. "Not yet." Zaina still hadn't turned around. She was chatting now with another man, probably hoping Toby would glance back. Rena could see the games being played in real time. She'd seen it before. She just hadn't expected it to walk up so confidently to her husband, at an event she helped organize. An older woman in a gold wrapper passed by, greeting Rena with a gentle squeeze on her arm. Rena nodded politely, her mind still watching the woman in red like a hawk. "I'm going to the restroom," she said softly to Ifeoma. "Don't follow." "What are you planning?" Ifeoma asked. "Nothing at all," Rena replied, already walking away. "But I want to see if she notices who I am when I pass." Rena moved gracefully through the room, weaving between guests. She passed within a few feet of Zaina. Still, no flicker of recognition. Instead, Zaina leaned toward her friend and whispered something with a smirk, eyes still glancing toward where Toby had disappeared. "Still doesn't know." Rena reached the hallway, calm on the outside but a storm quietly beginning inside her. She wasn't insecure. She didn't fear other women. But something about Zaina's boldness, her confidence in not knowing, struck a different nerve. She closed the restroom door behind her and looked at herself in the mirror. Her reflection looked back, poised and beautiful. But her eyes? Her eyes were already preparing for war. A few moments later, she stepped out, just in time to overhear two women gossiping near the hallway. "I heard she's trying to get into business consulting," one said. "Thinks she can snag a client tonight." "With that dress?" the other laughed. "She's not fishing for clients, she's fishing for a husband." They laughed together. Rena didn't join in. She just walked past, head high, mind already calculating. She'd seen Zaina's type before, but never this close to home. Later, as the event wound down, Toby approached Rena by the refreshment table. "She was bold," he said without preamble. "She was stupid," Rena corrected. "Didn't even Google you before throwing herself at you." Toby sighed. "I didn't encourage her. You didn't stop her either." He was quiet for a moment. You want me to say something to her? No, Rena said, her voice like velvet with a steel edge. Let her wonder. Let her realize it in front of everyone. I want her to feel the same public boldness she gave you. Toby raised an eyebrow. You're plotting. No, Rena replied with a slow smile. I'm waiting. As they walked out of the ballroom together, Zaina watched them from the other end of the room. Her brows furrowed. Her eyes darted between them. Something in her posture shifted. The wheels had begun to turn. And Rena knew, tonight was just the beginning. The next morning, the buzz from the gala hadn't died. Social media was flooded with photos, hashtags, and comments. Everyone praised the decor, the cause, and most of all, the guests. But among the glamorous shots, a particular image began making rounds, Zaina laughing with Toby, her hand lingering too long on his arm. Rena saw it while sipping her lemon water. I see she found the camera too, she muttered. Toby entered the living room, nodding his tie. You've seen it? He asked. I was tagged 5 times already, Rena replied, not looking up. Bold touch, Toby. Very bold. He sighed, sitting across from her. Rena, I didn't invite it. She just touched you like you belonged to her. He rubbed his temples. I didn't touch her back. That's the defense? You stood there and let her entertain herself with my husband in public? Toby stood. Rena, I walked away. You didn't walk away, she corrected. You smiled. You lingered. You gave her enough rope to feel encouraged. I was being polite. No. You were being flattered. The room fell into silence. Then Rena stood, heels clicking on the marble. She picked up her purse. Politeness is not worth my peace, Toby. Learn that. As she reached the door, he called out, Where are you going? To the office, she replied coldly. I have a brand to run. And no time to clean up behind foolishness. The door clicked shut. Across town, Zaina reclined on her bed, scrolling through the tagged photos. She smiled at the one with Toby. Her group chat was already lighting up. Bolu, girl, you pulled a big fish. Ada, is he single? He looked too available last night, face with tears of joy. Zaina, he was polite. That means open winking face. Her confidence was soaring. She didn't know his last name. Didn't know his wife had just seen every frame. She just knew he had money, charm, and didn't push her away. To her, that was a green light. But a storm was brewing, and she was far from ready. 2 days later, Zaina met her girls at a rooftop lounge for drinks. Her outfit? Tight black dress, heels too high for comfort, and a confidence even higher. She was glowing. I swear the way he smiled, she said, sipping from her cocktail. Like he knew he liked me. Ada leaned forward. What's his name again? Toby something. He owns some firm. Or maybe he's a partner? You didn't get his full name? Zaina laughed. That's what part 2 is for. I'll find out when I bump into him again. Men love a good chase. Just then their waiter, a young man with sharp eyes and even sharper hearing, walked by, pausing at the mention of Toby. He glanced at the screen of Zaina's phone and saw the photo. That's Mr. Toby Adegbite, he said casually. The CEO of Adegbite Capital, and husband of Rena Adegbite. Zaina blinked. Husband? Yes. His wife owns Elon Lux, the fashion brand. She was at the gala too. Didn't you see her? Zaina swallowed hard. She was there? The waiter nodded. Front row. Everyone knows her. Zaina turned back to her drink in silence. Ada snorted. Wait, you were flirting with a married man? I didn't know. Zaina snapped. He didn't have a ring on? Yes, he did, the waiter cut in, walking away. Zaina suddenly felt cold. Her stomach turned. And for the first time in a long time, Zaina was speechless. That night, Rena and Toby drove home from a dinner with close friends. The car was silent, save for the sound of the engine and the faint hum of tires against asphalt. Toby cleared his throat. I heard Zaina found out who you are today. Rena didn't reply. She apparently told people she didn't know I was married. Still silence. Toby turned to her slightly. I didn't mean to embarrass you. You didn't embarrass me, Rena said calmly. You embarrassed yourself. And you let another woman humiliate your marriage. He exhaled. So that's what this is now? Rena turned her gaze to him, voice steady. What did you expect me to say? That I'm okay with you being flirted with in public while you grin like a schoolboy? I wasn't grinning. You were flattered, Toby. Admit it. You didn't stop her because deep down it felt good. Toby's hands tightened on the steering wheel. I love you, Rena. I don't doubt that, she replied. But love isn't always the problem. Boundaries are. He parked in their driveway and cut the engine. I never crossed a line. No. You left the door wide open and hoped she'd walk out on her own. That's worse. They sat in silence for another minute before Rena stepped out. Inside, she walked straight to the bedroom, not waiting for him. She was calm, yes. But beneath that calm was a quiet storm that was only just beginning. The next morning, Rena opened her phone and gasped. There it was. Zaina's face in full glam from the gala night. Her hand casually placed on Toby's arm, a mischievous caption underneath. Business got sweeter tonight, winking face #moves in silk. Rena blinked. Then blinked again. She turned the phone and showed it to Toby, who had just walked in with his coffee. What is this? Toby nearly choked. You've got to be kidding me. Oh, she's not, Rena replied. She's tagging your company now? He quickly grabbed his phone. I'll get it taken down. No, Rena said. Toby looked at her. Let it stay up. Why? Because now I know what I'm dealing with. He ran his hand over his head, frustrated. Rena, I swear I never encouraged this. I'll block her. I'll issue a company statement if needed. Rena's eyes narrowed. You'll do nothing for now. She stood up, picking up her laptop. You know what bothers me most? What? She posted that knowing who I am. Meaning now it's not just ignorance, it's war. Toby stood in the doorway of Rena's home office, watching her type furiously at her laptop. The glow from the screen cast a soft blue tint on her face, but there was no warmth in her expression. Rena, he said gently. She didn't respond. I didn't flirt with her. Close the door, Rena said without looking up. Toby obeyed, stepping inside and slowly approaching her desk. I didn't ask her to touch me. I didn't even touch her back. I was polite, maybe too polite, but that's all. Rena stopped typing and finally met his eyes. Do you think I'm angry because you touched her? He hesitated. Aren't you? I'm angry because you didn't stop her. You let her flirt with you in public. You stood there and smiled while she wrapped herself in your aura like a silk scarf. Toby frowned. You're exaggerating. No, I'm not. Because now that woman has turned our marriage into a trending topic. And you know what makes it worse? She stood and walked toward him. You didn't protect me. Not with your body language, not with your words, not with a single gesture. I didn't know it would blow up like this. Rena laughed bitterly. That's the problem. You don't think beyond the moment. You didn't ask yourself, how would this look to my wife? To my employees? To the world? He folded his arms. You think I don't care about our image? I think you care more about being liked. He stepped back. That stung. Rena crossed her arms. If you don't know how to guard what's yours, Toby, then I will. She walked past him without another word. And Toby knew, this wasn't just about Zaina anymore. This was about everything he had failed to protect. 2 days later, the Elon Lux PR team was in full swing preparing for the charity fashion event of the year. Rena sat at the head of the long conference table, flipping through the guest list. Add Zaina Nwachukwu, she said calmly. Heads turned. Ma, her assistant Dara blinked. Did you mean? Yes, Zaina. The same one who's been trending. Another manager hesitated. Should we issue her a formal invitation? Rena smiled. Send it directly to her email. Make sure the message sounds personal. Let her feel chosen. The room went silent. Rena leaned back in her chair, fingers steepled. I want her to attend. I want her comfortable. Confident. I want her to wear her boldest gown. Because I'm not going to confront her with shouting. I'll confront her with presence. Later that evening, Zaina received the email and gasped. Dear Miss Nwachukwu, you are cordially invited to attend the Elon Lux Charity Fashion Gala as a VIP guest. She squealed and immediately shared the news in her group chat. Zaina, you see? Even the wife's company wants me around. I must be doing something right, smirking face fire. She didn't know she was walking into a chess game. And Rena already had her next move planned. The night of the event arrived. The venue glowed with lights, camera flashes, and elite guests. Rena stepped out of her black SUV wearing a breathtaking floor-length champagne gown with a cape that shimmered like moonlight. Toby followed in a classic black tuxedo, his expression unreadable. Inside, Zaina had already arrived, dressed in a bright fuchsia gown that hugged every curve. She held a flute of champagne and scanned the room eagerly. That's her, a girl whispered nearby. That's the girl from the Post. Zaina smiled proudly, soaking in the attention. Until she saw them. Rena and Toby. Front row. Together. Rena's eyes met hers. Calm. Regal. Piercing. Toby didn't even acknowledge her. Zaina's smile faltered. As models strutted down the runway, the tension off stage overshadowed the beauty on it. Zaina sat frozen in her chair, wondering if she had just made the biggest mistake of her life. When Rena stood to make a speech mid-show, the applause roared. She didn't mention names. She didn't need to. Her presence was the loudest mic drop of the night. Zaina finally realized, this was never a coincidence. She had underestimated the woman she had crossed. After the show, guests mingled over dessert and drinks. Zaina excused herself to the restroom, trying to collect her thoughts. She was still reeling from the sheer elegance and power Rena had exuded on stage. As she applied lip gloss in front of the mirror, the door opened. Rena stepped in. Zaina's eyes widened. Rena didn't flinch. She approached the sink, washed her hands, then looked at Zaina through the mirror. "Beautiful night, isn't it?" she said softly. Zaina cleared her throat. "Yes, the event was lovely." Rena turned to face her. "You didn't know who I was that night at the gala. That's fine. But now you do." Zaina nodded quickly, her voice small. "I didn't mean to disrespect." "Stop," Rena interrupted. "This isn't about you apologizing. It's about you understanding something." She took a step closer. "The next time you feel bold enough to reach for something, make sure it's not already owned." Zaina stared at her, speechless. Rena smiled, not unkindly. "Have a good evening, Zaina." And with that she walked out, cape flowing behind her like royalty. Zaina didn't move. She had just been confronted, with class and fire. And she knew she would never forget it. Back at Toby's firm the next week, things were anything but quiet. The infamous photo of Zaina flirting with Toby had resurfaced, again. But this time it was accompanied by a video clip. Someone had recorded Zaina placing her hand on Toby's arm, laughing suggestively. The angle captured Rena in the background, watching with calm amusement. The caption? "When you flirt with a king, and his queen is watching. Flushed face crown #wife goals." The video spread like wildfire. Toby's employees exchanged glances in elevators. HR quietly reviewed social media policies. Zaina, who had been trying to land a business partnership with one of the firm's consultants, was suddenly ghosted. At lunch, 2 interns whispered at the corner table. Did she really not know who Rena was? I don't think she even Googled him. She's finished. Zaina stayed home for days. Rena, on the other hand, had just posted a teaser of her upcoming talk series, Women with Boundaries. No shade. No names. But everyone knew. The queen didn't shout. She simply moved. And the whole world adjusted. The interview chair was velvet gold. The backdrop, elegant, minimalistic. The topic? Women with Boundaries. Rena adjusted her mic calmly, crossing her legs as the host smiled. "We're honored to have the powerhouse behind Elon Lux with us today, Mrs. Rena Adegbite." She returned the smile politely. "Thank you." The host leaned in. "Let's talk about boundaries in professional spaces. How do you navigate that as a wife and CEO?" Rena's eyes glinted. "I've learned that silence isn't weakness," she said smoothly. "Sometimes the best clapback is success. And when people cross boundaries, especially in public, you don't always need to shout. You just need to move with power." The host nodded eagerly. "Have you ever had your personal life tested in a professional setting?" Rena's smile didn't falter. "Let's just say I've watched people make bold mistakes, and I let them learn the hard way who they were dealing with." The room hummed with intrigue. Cameras clicked. Viewers watching online began quoting her words in captions and comment sections. That night, Rena's clip trended everywhere. Zaina saw it on her timeline. Rena's face glowing, her voice calm, her words cutting like a polished blade. "She's talking about me," she whispered. And the worst part? The world was applauding. Toby scrolled through his feed in silence. Every post, every hashtag, every article was about Rena's new women's series. "Class with teeth," one journalist called her. "She handled public embarrassment like royalty," another wrote. He sighed and tossed the phone aside. Downstairs, he could hear Rena's laughter echoing through the living room as she entertained 2 investors for her women's foundation. Her presence filled the house, but he felt more invisible than ever. When they finally retired to the bedroom, she peeled off her heels and headed to the bathroom without a word. Toby followed. "Rena," he said, leaning on the doorframe. She looked at him through the mirror. "I'm proud of you," he said quietly. She blinked. "Thank you. I mean it. You've handled everything so well. The interviews, the campaign, all of it." She turned to face him. "But he swallowed. I feel like I've become the shadow in your spotlight. Rena's expression didn't change. You want me to dim myself so you feel bright again? Toby's shoulders slumped. That's not what I meant. She stepped forward. You let another woman drag me through public embarrassment. And now that I've reclaimed my narrative, you feel left behind. I made a mistake, he murmured. Yes, she said softly. And now I'm showing you how not to repeat it. She turned and walked past him. Lesson delivered. It was a quiet Wednesday afternoon when Toby received the message. Zaina Nwachukwu, can we talk? Coffee. No drama. Just closure. He stared at it for a long while. Then locked his phone. But Rena already knew. Later that evening she placed a cup of hibiscus tea on his study desk. You saw her message? Toby looked up in surprise. How did you? She posted a cryptic story about closure and what-ifs. I'm not blind. He exhaled. I didn't respond. Rena nodded slowly. Good. She turned to leave then paused. Out of curiosity, what would you have said if you did respond? Toby hesitated. I would have told her there's nothing left to say. Except that there was once something to say? His jaw clenched. Rena, I didn't cheat. No, she said, eyes sharp. But you entertained. She walked away. Zaina sat in the cafe the next day watching the door. Toby never came. She stirred her untouched coffee, growing restless, humiliated. Across town, Rena closed her laptop and smirked. She hadn't needed to ask Toby not to go. She had already positioned herself as the prize. He knew better now. The Elon Lux Women with Boundaries Summit was at capacity. Hundreds of women gathered, dressed in elegant hues, notebooks in hand, waiting for Rena's next keynote. Toby sat backstage quietly observing, his admiration growing. On stage, Rena began with grace. We've all been in situations where someone crosses the line, be it professionally or personally. But how we respond matters. She clicked the remote in her hand. A video played on the massive screen. Gasps echoed through the hall. It was a clip from the gala. Zaina leaning toward Toby, touching his arm, flirting. Then a slow zoom out, revealing Rena in the background watching it all, calm and composed. The screen faded to black. Applause erupted. Rena spoke. Sometimes people don't realize they're being watched. And sometimes the best way to respond is to simply wait. Let them show the world who they are. No names were mentioned. But everyone understood. Backstage, Toby stood in awe. This wasn't revenge. This was power with restraint. And no one did it like Rena. Later that night, after the summit, Toby waited in their bedroom. Rena entered, removing her jewelry. You were amazing today, he said. Thank you. He hesitated, then stood. Rena, can we talk? She turned, sensing the seriousness in his voice. I want to admit something, he said. Not because I have to, but because I owe you the truth. She raised an eyebrow. I liked the attention. Rena didn't speak. Toby continued, voice low. I didn't want her. But I won't lie. It felt good to be admired. To be flirted with. And I guess I didn't shut it down fast because it fed my ego. Rena's arms dropped to her side. So you watched me deal with humiliation, because you were flattered? Toby's eyes stung. I hate that I let it happen. I hate that you had to fight a battle I should have stopped before it began. Rena's voice was a whisper. So I was right. You didn't protect me, because her validation felt better than my dignity. Toby's heart sank. He stepped closer. I'm sorry, Rena. I truly am. I've never admired your strength more than I do now. And I'll spend the rest of my life proving that you don't have to fight alone anymore. She looked away. I'll need time. He nodded. I'll wait. And for the first time in weeks, Toby finally told the truth. Even if it hurt. For the first time in years, Rena slept on the far edge of their bed, back turned to Toby, heart barricaded behind silence. In the morning she packed a single suitcase. Are you leaving me? Toby asked, standing at the doorway like a guilty boy. Rena looked up calmly. No. I'm creating space. His brows furrowed. But this is your home, our home. And yet, she said, zipping the case, right now it doesn't feel like mine. He watched her helpless. Where will you go? My sister's. It's just a few days. She straightened. Not because I'm running away, but because I need to breathe without holding my breath around you. He opened his mouth to protest, then closed it. She wasn't angry, she was tired. And that was worse. Rena drove off without a kiss, without a look back. News of her move didn't stay quiet for long. One staff member saw her enter her sister's house. Another posted a photo captioned, The queen takes her crown elsewhere. By evening, Twitter was ablaze. Rena Adegbite moved out? She deserves better. This woman redefined grace under fire. At her sister's place, Rena sat by the window, scrolling through the messages. Some pitied her. Others praised her. But none of them knew the real war, the one between love and self-respect. Across town, Toby stood in their walk-in closet, staring at the empty space where her shoes used to be. He had never felt more alone. Zaina refreshed her email for the third time that morning, frowning. The modeling campaign she had been shortlisted for, gone. No explanation. No callback. Just silence. She checked her spam folder. Nothing. Then she logged onto Instagram, and her jaw dropped. The brand Bell Skin Company had announced their new ambassador, a wellness coach known for integrity, class, and emotional strength. She recognized the woman immediately. Rena's mentee. Zaina's hands trembled. She grabbed her phone and called the contact at Bell Skin Company. "Hi, it's Zaina Nwachukwu. I was informed I was a strong candidate for the campaign." The voice on the other end was firm. "The brand has decided to go in another direction." "Can I ask why?" Pause. "Let's just say your recent public behavior doesn't align with our values." Click. Zaina dropped the phone, breath shallow. She finally understood. Rena hadn't screamed. She hadn't ranted. She had simply moved. And with every step, Zaina lost something. Clients stopped responding. Brands distanced themselves. Her social media following slowed. Every room she once walked into with pride now whispered behind her back. The woman in red had burned brightly for a moment. But queens like Rena? They outlasted storms. Zaina was no longer a contender. She was a cautionary tale. It had been 2 weeks since Rena left home. In those 2 weeks, she signed 2 brand deals, launched a new podcast, and mentored 3 young women in business. Her voice had never been louder. Her silence with Toby, never heavier. On a rainy Thursday morning, Rena received a call from Toby's office assistant. "Ma, Mr. Toby requested that I pass along an invitation. It's unconventional." Rena raised a brow. "Unconventional?" "An address. He said to give it to you with no details. Only to say, this time it's just for you." Rena hung up, intrigued but cautious. An hour later, she pulled up to a secluded estate outside the city. Lush, quiet, sprawling with greenery. Her heels crunched on gravel as she stepped out. The gates opened to reveal a stone path lined with rose bushes. At the end of the path stood Toby, holding an umbrella, drenched but smiling. "What is this?" Rena asked, stepping under the cover with him. He gestured behind. The house looked like something from a fairy tale. White stone walls, tall windows, a wraparound balcony. A modern-day castle. "I built this over the last year." Quietly. "I wanted it to be a surprise." Rena looked at him, unsure. "For what?" "For you." He led her through the foyer, grand but warm. Every detail was curated with her taste in mind. Minimalist decor, soft lighting, art from her favorite female painters. They entered a private studio with glass walls overlooking a lake. "I know I can't undo what happened," Toby said quietly. "But I wanted to create something that reminded you you're irreplaceable. This isn't a bribe. It's a promise. A space where you'll never have to question what's yours again." Rena swallowed, eyes watering slightly. "And if I walk away tomorrow? Then you'll still keep this. It has your name on the deed." She turned toward the window, silent. Not because she was weak, but because even queens have hearts that long to be held. The ballroom shimmered in gold and candlelight. It wasn't another gala, it was the Empower Her annual summit, the biggest event Rena had ever hosted. Over 600 women, media figures, influencers, and CEOs from across Africa gathered for a night of mentorship, celebration, and recognition. And Rena? She stood at the center of it all. Dressed in a regal black velvet gown with gold embroidery along the neckline, she looked every inch the woman the world now admired, graceful, powerful, resilient. Her name was on every banner, her logo on every seat. Her voice had echoed in every headline for weeks. But tonight, the room buzzed not just for her leadership, but for what might happen. Because everyone knew Toby Adegbite was in the building. He'd arrived quietly, dressed in a tailored navy tuxedo. His face was unreadable, but those close to him knew this wasn't a social appearance. It was an appeal. Midway through the evening, just after the final award was announced, the host stepped back from the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, glancing backstage, "we have one last surprise. Someone who requested just a few minutes of your time." Rena's brow furrowed slightly. She hadn't approved this. Then the curtain shifted. and Toby walked onto the stage. Gasps swept the room like wind through dry leaves. Rena's heart thudded. He took the mic. "Good evening," he began, voice steady despite the spotlight. "I know this isn't conventional, and I know this moment doesn't belong to me, but I hope it can belong to us." All eyes shifted to Rena. Toby continued. "A few months ago I stood beside my wife at another event. I watched as another woman crossed lines she shouldn't have. I smiled. I stayed silent. And I failed to protect what mattered most." Cameras were already recording. The audience was breathless. "Rena Adegbite," he said, eyes locking onto hers in the crowd, "you are the reason I am who I am. The world may know me as a CO, but without you, I'm a shell in a suit." He stepped forward. "You carried our name with grace when I tainted it. You turned humiliation into a platform. You didn't just respond, you redefined power. And tonight, in front of the same world that watched you suffer silently, I want to say something loudly." He took a shaky breath. "I am sorry." Whispers circled the room. Some clapped softly. Toby continued, emotion rising in his voice. "I'm not asking you to forget. I'm not asking you to trust me blindly again. I'm asking for a chance to walk beside you again, not as a man who takes you for granted, but as one who will never make you question your place in his life." He looked down for a second, then raised his eyes once more. "If forgiveness is too much, I'll understand. But if you believe there's still something between us worth fighting for, then I'll spend the rest of my life proving I'm worthy of it." He set the mic down and stepped off the stage slowly. The room fell into a heavy silence. Then all eyes turned to Rena. She hadn't moved. Her hands were clasped in her lap, her expression unreadable. Dara, her assistant, leaned over and whispered, "Do you want to leave?" Rena shook her head gently. "No. I want to stand." She rose to her feet, the crowd parting like the sea as she made her way toward the stage. Each step was slow, measured, intentional. When she reached the mic, she paused, hands resting lightly on the stand. Toby stood just a few feet away, still, quiet, waiting. Rena looked out at the crowd. "When a woman is tested publicly, she has two choices," she began, her voice clear and calm. "She can shrink, or she can rise." The crowd nodded silently. "I chose to rise, not because I wasn't broken, but because I refused to stay down." Applause. But rising isn't about revenge. It's about clarity. And clarity sometimes demands distance. She turned slowly to face Toby. "You didn't cheat on me, Toby. But you did something worse. You abandoned me in a moment where I needed you to be loud, and you chose to be quiet." Toby nodded, lips pressed. "I won't lie to the world and say your apology fixes everything. It doesn't. But..." She exhaled slowly. "It matters." The room leaned in. "You said you'd spend your life proving yourself." "Good. Because I'm not the same woman who entered that gala. I'm stronger, sharper, and harder to keep." Toby's eyes glistened. "But," she said, her voice softening, "if you truly understand the woman I've become, and not just the one you married, then maybe, just maybe, we can rebuild, brick by brick." There was a beat of silence. Then she stepped forward. Toby held his breath. Rena reached for his hand, not with weakness but with a queen's grace. The ballroom erupted. Flashbulbs. Cheers. Tears. Women stood and clapped. Some hugged. Others cried. Because what they had just witnessed wasn't just a romantic reunion, it was the power of dignity, love, and earned forgiveness. Backstage, Dara wiped a tear. "She's doing it her way," she whispered. And in the center of the room, under chandeliers and spotlights, Rena stood hand in hand with the man who had once failed her. Not because she forgot, but because she remembered who she was. 3 months later, the ballroom lights were long gone. The applause had faded. The headlines cooled. But Rena's life had only gotten louder, louder with clarity, peace, and purpose. She sat on a rooftop balcony at the new estate, her castle. Morning sunlight spilled across the wide veranda as birds chirped in the distance. Her cup of ginger tea steamed beside her laptop. Across the garden, Toby was doing something she never thought she'd see, watering plants in a white t-shirt and joggers, sleeves rolled up, smile relaxed. He caught her watching and waved shyly. She didn't wave back. Instead, she smiled, quietly, knowingly, because she wasn't watching a man. She was watching a lesson that had finally been learned. Her phone buzzed beside her. "Dara, are you sure about this speech today?" "Rena, 100%. Today marked the final taping for the Women with Boundaries series. Rena had saved the most personal episode for last, a segment titled My Name, My Story. This time no glamour. No host. No guests. Just her. She stood in front of a white backdrop later that afternoon. Cameras were ready. Lights low. Crew silent. Rena took her seat on the high stool in the center, dressed in a simple cream blouse, no jewelry except her wedding ring and her late mother's bangle. The director gave her the nod. She looked into the lens. My name is Rena Adegbite. And for a long time that name carried other people's expectations. Wife, CO, woman who never complains. She inhaled slowly. I lived quietly beside a man who loved me but forgot how to protect me. I was admired for my poise but ignored when it truly mattered. And when I was publicly disrespected, I was expected to keep smiling. She tilted her head slightly. I did smile. But I also rebuilt. Cut to clips. Her walking through Elon Lux's offices, shaking hands with interns, signing donation checks, laughing with young women during mentoring circles. Voiceover continued. When someone flirts with your husband in public, and your husband stays silent, you're forced to choose. Cry behind closed doors or rise in front of the world. I chose the latter. Not because I had something to prove but because I knew who I was. Cut back to her on the stool, eyes piercing. And I needed the world to know it too. She paused. Toby and I are still together. She looked down briefly then back up. But not because I forgave easily. And not because I forgot. But because he earned it, every inch of grace. He apologized in front of the same crowd that watched him fail. And then he stayed. Quietly. Humbly. Consistently. Images flashed. Toby holding her coat before an event. Toby setting up chairs for a seminar. Toby hugging her tightly backstage. Rena's voice returned. I don't believe in fairy tales. I believe in growth. In consequences. And in second chances only when they're deserved. She smiled softly. The woman I am now doesn't need validation. She doesn't wait for her name to be cleared, she clears it herself. She walks into rooms knowing she belongs. And if another woman tries to flirt with what's hers again. She leaned forward slightly. She'll find out quick. A laugh off camera. Rena smiled. But more importantly, she'll find out who she's dealing with. The screen faded to black. Later that night the video went live. Within 30 minutes, it had 500,000 views. In 1 hour, every comment section was flooded. This is how you reclaim your name. Rena is the definition of class and clapback. She didn't just forgive, she transformed. Toby's lucky she gave him another shot. She's gold. Even Zaina watched it from her tiny apartment, wrapped in a blanket, laptop on her chest. Her face was blank. No one remembered her anymore. She wasn't mentioned. Not even once. But she knew exactly who Rena had been talking about. And somehow the silence was the loudest punishment of all. The next morning, Rena walked through her castle estate with a leather notebook in hand. Her foundation was expanding. Her mentorship waitlist had tripled. Her name now opened doors on her terms. Toby joined her on the garden trail, slipping a hand around her waist. Going into town? He asked. Mentor brunch. Then a board meeting. He nodded. Anything you need me to do? She smiled. Yes. Stay out of my spotlight. He grinned, mock hurt. Ouch. But, she added, stay close enough to clap when I shine. He stopped walking and pulled her into a gentle hug. Always. She rested her head on his chest, only for a moment. Then she pulled away. I have to go. She turned to leave, heels crunching softly on the gravel. Toby called after her, voice warm. Rena? She looked over her shoulder. You saved me. She tilted her head. No. I saved myself. You just showed me what I never want to lose again. And with that she walked on. Into her story. Into her power. Into a future where no one would ever confuse her presence for silence again. Her name was Rena Adegbite. And now the world would never forget it. Liked it? Thumbs up, subscribe and join the AfriHeart fam. Your support fuels our stories. Until next time.